Go ahead.
My name is Arjan Rizaj. I have a question, and it's kind of a concern. For example, if we compare Kosovo with Macedonia, they have excluded the 16% tax for technology. Do you think that Kosovo, we students and everybody here who uses technology, is on that position to require something from our government, something similar to that? Anyone? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that question. I'm a former president and a vice president of Kosovo Association of ICT Companies, whose representative we have here. It's Vjosa Chavoli. She's standing in the audience. We have recently sent a proposal which was drafted and, let's say, funded partially as a project by DFID, UK government-based funding organization. And as such, we have prepared a list of the ICT equipment, hardware mainly, which is not part of the consumer electronics and can be regarded as something to be excluded from the, first of all, import taxes, and secondly, to be amended to current VAT legislation. In Macedonia, they have a scalable VAT, let's say, policy and scheme, which we cannot unfortunately apply in Kosovo because it is related also to legislation and the current infrastructure, ICT infrastructure in tax administration. But for sure, we have received a very positive feedback from the Kosovo Customs, first of all. Secondly, from the former Ministry of Finance, which was part of the negotiation and drafting at that point of time, and the Prime Minister's office. So hopefully, the new government, new ministries, will act upon the draft, let's say, proposal that we have sent already. And we believe that most of the items that have been included in this draft will be excluded in the future, for sure, from customs. For VAT, we will have to wait for a couple of more years.
Can you give us some examples, specific items that you requested to be excluded from VAT?
So, everything which is related to PCs, personal computers, servers, parts in the equipment, networking hardware. Just for an example, for instance, projectors, DLP projectors, digital line processing projectors are also included, but not the ones that are being used, for instance, in the cinematography award. So everything which is not connected to consumer part of electronics is in that sense, will be excluded. Mobile phones for sure not. That is part of the consumer electronics. LCD displays, currently, although there is legislation coming in Europe to exclude LCD displays as well, because they are becoming part of the ICT society with inclusion of Ethernet ports on them, but for the time being, they will be also part of the consumer electronics. So generally, most of IT equipment and what is regarded as IT equipment.
Okay. Arjan?
You mentioned consumer electronics and the exclusion regarding VAT and maybe import tax. On what basis is the definition made for the consumer electronics? Because a few months ago I was thinking with some friends from the UP, from your faculty, on maybe creating a startup here, and we were thinking about using rather unconventional technologies such as the Xbox 3D Kinect sensors and maybe some Wii sensors, and it simply was too expensive because of the VAT, even though we could have opened up a company with traditional consumer electronics.
Xbox is definitely a consumer electronic, and I agree with you, and my 10-year-old child most probably agrees with you as well on that. We are lucky that we are not the ones to define what is consumer electronics and what is not. There is something called a customs book in EU, which is, let's say, publicly accessible, and which defines and from what derives what is actually to be excluded from customs in Europe. We are, by the way, we are the only country in the region currently having any taxes on import taxes on ICT equipment. So, what is consumer electronic is more or less already predefined. Every Xbox and other game consoles are in that package.
We can hear, I think we can hear each other.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Well, during your presentation, you made an analogy between Kosovo and China. I want to know more about. Can you go more specifically and tell us how Kosovo IT sector is going to compete against China's market?
Okay.
The comparison with China was just only to show that internet has made our world smaller. I usually tell to my students, download this tool which is free to use for during our, let's say, lectures. But if we have such all free tools, how we can make our salary? How can we make money without applications? So in fact, our students, you and we and all, have to compete with this free application. They have to compete with Chinese, which has very, let's say, not expensive labor force, very cheap labor force. So the idea was that we need to be more innovative in order to get more market shares. So that's the idea comparing with China. And innovation, in my opinion, is the only exit to this competition with China with other cheaper countries coming like China, Pakistan, India, etc.
Yeah, but again, China is such an humongous economy compared to our economy. Again, even being creative. Plus, I mean, Kosovo being creative in this department again, it's going to be too hard to compete with them. Again.
No, my question is more linked on how do you get your salary? Why I have to pay you as a, let's say, a company, why I have to pay you, when I can get everything free from internet? How you get your salary? With, let's say, development, if you work in IT, in the development sector, why I have to pay you as a developer to develop an application when I can have free from internet? This is a question which I want to raise also here, and I think our discussion will be also focused here. Why we need developers, why we need developers to customize our requirements, and I think this is the place, the section where we need developers in order to customize our requirements or user requirements in order to have the specific solution which is custom-made for customer case. And this is where we have this competition. It's more a question which is related to everybody here. Why somebody will pay you when we have free application from internet?
Okay, somebody would like to add something on that?
Or maybe try to answer this question, why should somebody will pay you, will hire you first of all in the company to develop something where most of the software is come, let's say, free on the internet.
Okay, let me bring Taulant in this case. He has been very active in the open source world, and I want to have his insight actually about this particular question and the open source in general. So what is your view on that, Taulant?
I guess you've mentioned me because I'll be presenting Mozilla Firefox on the release party. In Kosovo, you mentioned that essentially if you get something for free online, there cannot be an economy or money-making machine behind it, in a sense. You can't pay salaries for people, which in a sense is true. I think so. Especially in the case for closed source pirated software. If the closed source pirated software gets pirated, the money is lost, the economy in that case is lost. But if you do open source, very specified software and modular software, if I'm getting too fast,
you can say something. And you can create, instead of product economies, service economies on top of that. For example, I see all the time LPIC certificate job offers online for here in Kosovo for different companies. And there are very few people who are LPIC Linux Professional Institute certified. So their salaries are like incredibly high for Kosovo standards. But that's all service related, it's not product related. You don't sell the product, you sell the service for that product. And I think, for example, if the government of Kosovo would simply adapt open source software instead of closed source software, and instead of paying millions a year for that money going out, you could instead pay that same amount of money for developers here or even the university here to simply develop further that software locally and actually get that money back into the country. So open source software can be humongously more economical than closed source product software. That's my opinion.
Somebody would like to add something on that?
Yeah, I would like to.
Yeah.
I would like to comment on that. So it's a very old discussion about that, how much free is free. And I will give you a very simple example of two experiences we had in 2008 and 2009. When Visar is here, he used to work in A.U.K at that point of time. We as a company have installed a virtualization platform for IPCO and for PTK. In IPCO, we have worked on IBM servers with Microsoft virtualization software. And in PTK, we have done the same on IBM servers with Linux, Red Hat. The cost was a bit higher in PTK case. So going back to the discussion of how much free is free, really, specifically maybe in the system software and operating system software, I think that discussion is more or less on the same level.